I'd like to welcome Kristen, Marje and Sarah from Otago Polytechnic. They will share their views on setting up a neurodiversity community of practice with kaimahi and akonga, and the steering group, who meet regularly, also share best practice and raise kaiako awareness of neurodiversity across the Polytechnic. Their presentation is called Sharing from Our Neurodiverse Community of Practice. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, just checking that you can see our presentation and hear me. Cool. Yeah. Right, we better crack right along. I'm Kristen, and we wanted to talk about our community of practice here at Otago Polytech because we think it's got some real strengths in terms of its broad participation, its inclusion of staff and students, neurodivergent and neurotypical, and our outputs and activities. During the presentation, you'll see several images of ripples, and we feel that's a great visual representation of how our community of practice came about and is continuing to evolve. Not moving. Sorry, just click not working, or do it a different way. Sorry about that. Just while Marje is helping me get the right slide up, I'll begin by telling you a bit about the Neurodiversity Community of Practice steering group and how this formed and is evolving, because this is one of the strengths of our wider community of practice. Marje is going to share reflections from some members of the steering group, and I'm not sure if you can see now some lovely photos of people. Not yet.
Now I'm going to share it slightly differently, I think.
So we'll hear from Rachel from business, Amy from learning and teaching, Daniel from automotive, Stella from design, and Rami from the Student Association and the accessibility rep. And we asked them what is significant to them about our neurodiversity community of practice. And then Sarah's going to share some further examples of ripples from the neurodiversity community of practice and the hopes and wishes for the future from these members. So Marje is still just trying to get our slide.
I'm still not sure what you can see. Can someone just let me know what you can or can't see?
We can see your Teams site at the moment. Oh, there we go. Back to your presentation.
So we're in the presentation, but you're in the notes view, so that's okay, unless you'd like to.
No, I'm trying to put it in the slideshow. It doesn't want to do it.
Because we put she puts it in the bottom.
What thing?
See those wee icons right down the bottom right hand.
Those go. All works so perfect in our practice.
Maybe you need it went very well.
Go out and go back in.
Do you see the members of the community of practice now?
We can see them. But,
yeah, cool. Okay, well, that's cool.
We're just going to click through it.
Okay. Hop onto the next slide. Yeah. So just to note that I'll go through the timeline, but prior to 2021, obviously learning advisors and accessibility advisors, lecturers and other staff were working to support neurodivergent learners and attending professional development. But the story today begins from 2021 when a number of strands converged and the pace picked up. So in early 2021, the learning and teaching team received a few requests for professional development from different schools at roughly the same time. Staff wanted more resources and professional development so they could better support their neurodivergent learners. And Amy Benians and her learning and teaching colleagues had previously researched communities of practice as models for professional development, especially for staff who'd been teaching for some time. And they found that participants of communities of practice particularly liked the loose nature, the feeling that they could come and go as they got what they needed, that it was okay to drift in and out, and this was very attractive given busy lives. So with these requests for PD around neurodiversity coming in and this research on communities of practice, they decided this would be a good area to set up a neurodiversity community of practice. Soon after that, Amy and Stella Lang from design were attending an Ako Aotearoa hui for neurodiversity, and they noticed each other across the screen that they both had an IP address, and so they arranged to meet for a coffee on campus and to attend the next Ako hui together. And they started to think about organising an event that would raise awareness of neurodiversity on campus and provide the catalyst for forming a community of practice. So they shoulder tapped a few allies, such as the learning advisors and accessibility advisor team, to help with planning an event, a half-day symposium. And this was all during the uncertainty of COVID and all the challenges this involved. So the small group identified some potential guest speakers. They realised that adding a research component would not only provide useful insights, but would help get a little bit of funding. And we wanted to give OP staff and students the opportunity to present as well, as a way to strengthen connections and find out who else was out there. So lots of informal networking to get the word out, to call for abstracts, to shoulder tap and encourage people to present. And the inaugural hui was held, the inaugural symposium was held in November, attracting about 75 participants face-to-face or online. Jolene Stockman and Mike Stiles were great keynote speakers. There were also moving and very informative presentations from staff and a student who are neurodivergent. A post-symposium debrief was held, and the feedback from participants considered, it was very positive, and there was an obvious desire to have further hui. So a steering group now started to coalesce, which included some of the presenters from the symposium and then the original working group. And we continue to meet monthly for an hour, face-to-face and online, and strategize, share good practice, plan events. This group sort of evolved organically, formalising aspects of the structure in the terms of reference and our purpose as we got to know each other. For example, we decided our purpose was to be the steering and reference group rather than a broader community of practice. So in response to feedback from the symposium, we continue to organise shorter hui for all staff and encourage them to attend those. We've got another one tomorrow. And then we also have a digital presence on our staff intranet where we can share resources and advertise events. And we are going to continue to keep growing and strengthening our wider community of practice. And as part of that, we're currently planning a national conference in October next year. More about this later. So I'll pass on to Marje.
Thank you, Kristen. So we asked 5 participants in our community of practice to share their views with us, and they volunteered. So we asked them what the community meant to them, how it made a difference, and what they're wanting out of the community. I'm just assuming this works. So all of them said that the community is a very safe place. Rachel, a lecturer in business, she described her participation at the first symposium as her public reveal as neurodiverse. It was a very emotional presentation, and she was obviously quite nervous, but she described that she really saw it as an opportunity to be part of the greater good. And that's the greater good is something that all of the participants talked about as being a real driver in part of the community. Rachel felt inspired and a sense of empowerment from participating in the symposium and also consequently being part of the community. All members commented on the sharing of resources and ideas, of course, the core of that community as well. Stella talked about a genuine concern as, something that binds everyone in the community together. And participants reflected on a real understanding for each other, as well as all things neurodiverse. Rachel says that the community is very non-judgmental, and Stella refers to an open approach. Nobody says it's too hard. Yeah, so it's just a place to getting things done. Our student rep on the steering group, Rami, he talks about the ability to take things higher up as being really quite important in a community as well. And he's been excited to report that a lot of times the senior management at OP come and talk to him about getting feedback or different ideas around all things neurodiverse. So all this contributes to a safe place. I want to introduce you to Daniel Oscom. Daniel Oscom, again, is one of our participants, and he presented at the first symposium on formative visual literacy assessments. And you can see the photo there of a few of the students engaging with that. Daniel has a son with dysgraphia, and he's been involved in advocacy for his son and being involved in getting an assessment done, and just sort of it's opened up sort of an opportunity for him to be really interested in learning in a different way and assessing in a different way. So he has taken that on board in many different ways, and it's had a ripple effect. Real nice ripple effect, I think, in the fact that he's been asked to participate and to talk at Ako Aotearoa's Neurodiversity Community of Practice. He's been asked to talk at our School of Vet Nursing, place where he never thought he'd have a connection with. He has made changes to his learning materials. He's changed the colour of his PowerPoints. He's embedded some recordings, created different resources for his learners. He regularly reports back from our community to his colleagues in automotive and encouraged them to attend a hui. Daniel talks to students regularly and gets feedback to see what's working for them. He says the content should be challenging, but the assessments themselves shouldn't. And both, there's a nice connection, I suppose, with some of the other things that have been talked about, sort of normalising the offering of different flexible assessments through options. And that, that is the greater good, I think, for our community, is that we are advocating for that, options between individual and group assignments, and options between posters and recordings and pre-recorded stuff, those sorts of things. So, real nice goal and outcome of our community. There's our scope publication. There's a link there. I encourage you to check that out. Some of the stories, for instance, from Rachel's presentation, is in there, but many others too. So happy to put those slides up somewhere. Someone will tell me where to do that. And check that out. And so lastly, a bit of a plug for our conference that's going to happen next year. It's one way of making ourselves real visible and thinking about engagement, but internally we have, I suppose we've been growing different ways, through a Teams group, through our internet, through Ako Aotearoa, through our hui, all different ways of engaging. And now also we've started our journey towards the Dyslexia-friendly Quality Mark. We only just started that in September, so early days. So there's the plug for our symposium next year. We'd love for you to join us as a speaker, as a participant. Call for paper's not out yet, but if you want to flick us an email, we're happy to let you know as soon as that happens. I'm going to hand over to Sarah now, who we've got isolating in a separate room. Aren't we mean at difficult times, eh? So I'm going to hopefully click on the slides for Sarah. Are you there, Sarah?
I am, and I've discarded my mask momentarily. So what has the community of practice meant for learning advisors and the work that we do with neurodivergent learners? In short, it's got us talking a lot more about neurodiversity in general and the ways we might strengthen our support of neurodivergent learners. It's also led to small shifts in our practice that continue. It's given us more confidence to have open conversations with neurodivergent students about their learning preferences, the struggles they might have, but also with the understanding that not all learners may want to engage in those conversations. It's given us a better understanding of the language we use with our students. We're also more likely to recognise and commend students on the effective strategies and the workarounds that they've developed over many years to self-manage their learning. We're more mindful when creating in-house promotional material or sending out communications to students, how these might be received by our neurodivergent learners. For me, personally, I have a tendency to go off on a tangent when I get excited about a topic when I'm working with a learner. So I'm learning to bring more structure to my sessions with neurodivergent students. We recognise that the support we give to one student might look quite different to that we give to another. Whether it's a 15-minute check-in once a week instead of the usual 50-minute session, or giving a free subscription to Grammarly Premium to help a student formulate their writing. These are just some of the ripples that have been created thanks to the community of practice with its active presence across the institution, raising awareness among learning advisors. Now, I'd like you to meet Laura. Laura's a nursing student, and she's been using our service fairly regularly over the last 3 years. Laura's dyslexic. At one of these sessions, back in 2021, Laura became quite upset about an essay she'd spent several weeks on that she was finding very frustrating. In her own words, it had brought back emotions of being a young kid with dyslexia and feeling stupid in school. The timing of this meeting coincided with a presentation the learning advisor had recently attended about neurodiversity and superpowers. The slides from the presentation were shared, and together they discussed how these superpowers might apply to Laura in her nursing practice. Laura described this recently as a turning point. She went on to embrace her dyslexia wholeheartedly, becoming a passionate researcher of dyslexia in nursing, connecting with another dyslexic nurse who had similarly written about her own experiences. She presented to a group at Dunedin Hospital, a group of interested health professionals, and most recently this has culminated in an article which was published in this month's edition of Kaitiaki, the New Zealand Nursing Journal, and you'll see there a screenshot of her article, The Dyslexia Advantage in Nursing.
Sarah,
Here,
aloha mai for jumping in. Just we've got 1 minute until the AGM starts.
Right, I will rush through slightly faster. Of course, we want to acknowledge that Laura's experience is not the experience of all our learners, as Delphine alluded to earlier in her presentation. So finally, to conclude, we also asked members of the community to comment on what they want out of the group going forward, their hopes and wishes. Members expressed a desire for assessments that allow learners flexibility and choice, more opportunities to tell stories about neurodiversity to those in the wider organisation to raise awareness, that neurodiversity is not seen as a disability and that it's reflected in internal documentation and enrolment processes as well as external sources. One member hoped that the group would be flexible and fluid enough to meet the changes and challenges under te pukenga, such as staff changes. Another member discussed representation within the community and stressed the importance of maintaining student voice, a gender balance, and members who are neurodivergent. All members wish to continue to connect with others with the motivation to make a difference. And I will be very quick just to conclude that the Neurodiversity Community of Practice at Otago Polytechnic is an anchor stone that sends out ripples, led by a tight steering group, chaired by a neurodivergent chair, with neurodiverse, neurotypical, student and staff representation, all invested in a common good. It's a community where one can feel braver, embraced, and among like minds, feeling like we're a river, working with others to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen, Marge and Sarah. I really, really appreciate the time that you put into that, and looking forward to next year's conference. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge everyone that has presented this afternoon. It's a really, really busy time of year for us all, and I appreciate the time that you've taken to put your presentations and your research together to share with us all to help us fill our kitties. So kia ora, ngā mihi nui.